Welcome to the Beyond the Horizons podcast. In this episode, filmed at Empower 2025 in Berlin, head backup nerd Eric Harless catches up with Stefan Voss, VP of Product Management for Cove Data Protection. Together, they unpack what's new and what's next for cloud-based data protection.
So Stefan, hey, thanks for hopping in here. We're going to do just a quick little run through here and tell the folks about Empower 2025 in Berlin, Germany.
Nice.
So what is this? This is number 4 for you. Is that correct?
It is number 4. I think it started in Vegas, Prague, Frisco, and now it's Berlin.
Frisco, Texas. Yes, that was an event.
That was definitely an event. This is also nice. My home country. I don't come from Berlin. I come from Bonn, but it's kind of nice.
That's true. You are German speaking, are you not?
Yes.
So we've got quite a few attendees here. I was doing the stats in this one. We've got about 50% of our attendees make up between Germany, the Netherlands, the US, and the UK, and then the other 50% rest of the world.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really good mix of customers.
Definitely.
I know you did a session yesterday, our pre-day, and we brought some panelists in. Was there anything that you got out of that from a panelist perspective? Any key learning, something that you think the audience might like to have regurgitated?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because to your point, it was a very diverse crowd. We had an Australian, we had someone from the UK, and then we had a Austrian customer, different sizes, different segments, right? But the pain points are quite similar. It's all about efficiency. So it's not really the big surprise. It's not the buzzword bingo, AI, this, that. They're very, very pragmatic. They're trying to make a living. They need to be efficient. They need to automate to get to more automation, so to speak, right? And anything we can do to, yes, get the outcome, but, save some technician time is kind of was very validating. And I think the session overall was well received because we're not presenting to the audience hear from their peers, right?
Yeah. We're not here to sell.
Right.
The answer's in the room, as David Weeks would say.
Correct.
We want the partners to learn from each other and see an expert that's using our tools to solve their problems, and then go and learn from that. The takeaway I got from that session was reporting.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're working toward executive summary reports, and you're doing a roadmap session, I believe, with me, and I think Chris Groot's involved. You got some of your engineering managers here as well, and engineering leaders. Anything you want to foreshadow on that roadmap?
Well, I mean, there was one cool thing that we also touched on in the spirit of efficiency, right? Which is the billing API. So how do I get usage from an API, feed it into my PSA, which is where I do my work, right? My day-to-day. So that's going to help a lot because billing or invoicing can be pretty time-consuming and painful, but it's a must-needed thing. And so imagine you send that invoice to the customer, but you're not in a position to essentially send a proof of work, right? Or attestation of all the services rendered, right? So that's where the executive summary report comes in. And so I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to be basic, right? Everybody will want a lot of customization eventually, but just getting the basics, have the services run, are they green, and maybe get a sort of a list by devices, that would be a great start. And then as usual, we'll be customer driven, right? So we'll take that journey along with the customers.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that. I know we had several customers that signed up already to get a sneak peek or a preview of that.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me to the Canalys MSP Horizon report. This is a report that we commissioned, and it went out and polled a good number of our partners, looking to see where they see the market growing, what workloads and how they're going to protect their servers, where they're going to store their data in the future. There were some numbers and some interesting things that were in there. I'd like to throw some of that out and see if you can validate that for me. Are these things on your roadmap, or are these relevant? Are these real, or is it just hype in the market right now? I guess one of the first things was that they're talking about the adoption of SaaS workloads. I believe it was 53% of our respondents said something along the lines of they see SaaS as really where the growth is in endpoint protection in their customers' data set. 53% said that SaaS application backup is going to be the future. What's your answer to that? I know you do an M365 data protection today, but what's our next SaaS attack target?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a very spot on, right? I mean, we see most of the growth also by the numbers in terms of ARR and so forth in the SaaS, so cloud to cloud data protection. So that's kind of validating. And we know from an industry standpoint that the workloads are moving from on-premise right into the cloud. And maybe accelerating. It certainly is in some areas, and often they're actually using Cove, right, as a tool to migrate. So it's a recovery feature, but why not use it to kind of like move into the cloud? So that direction is definitely there from a business perspective. That stat is supported. And then, I would say that the next one would be along the lines of Google. So we were kind of like thinking about, well, what would be a good one? So Entra ID would be also a popular favorite, but it's a bit different, and it's really complicated with the recovery. So that's definitely on our radar as well, but we just decided to prioritize Google, right? So it's a production application. Do we need to stop, right? That's a loud.
This is laptop.
Oh, wow. Nice. There was some Discord call.
So if you just open the question before.
Yeah. I'll just answer the question, right? Which was.
The annual Canalys MSP Horizons report was saying that 53% of the respondents were looking at SaaS workloads as kind of the future for what they need to protect. I know we do M365 backup and recovery great today, and we're constantly expanding and growing that. But what's on the roadmap as far as new SaaS workloads?
Yeah. So first off, that stat, we can support that also with evidence in our product, right? That's the growth. That's the growth engine, cloud to cloud, right? We see customers moving from on-premise to the cloud. They're often using our product, right, to do that migration itself. So that's clearly a trend. And then obviously that begs the question, what's next, to your point? And we had two candidates. One was Entra ID. Of course, that's a very nice cyber recovery story, right? So in the case that I have to recover, attackers will often go after the Active Directory, right? So and then the second one was just Google Workspace. And that's, of course, more about standardization. It's annoying that I would have to buy another tool and use that just to serve my customers who have Google. So I would say, we quickly prioritized Google because any progress is good, right? But that was the more in-demand one, but we're certainly going to look at Entra ID. And just maybe one note, it's also a nice synergy with the breach prevention stuff that Adlumin is coming out, right? So if you just look at it from an end-to-end cyber resilience perspective, being able to sort of flag when there's breaches on these accounts, and then also having a recovery strategy, that's a really powerful, better together strategy, right? So.
Yeah, I think Mike Adler had said that. Was 42% of attacks that were coming through on the email side of the house. So going after your M365 user identities, trying to get into that and compromise your environment. So
and Google, right, which is what they plan. So there's also a good alignment, right, at the enable level. Yeah.
That opens up some other thoughts. You touched on this when you said people are migrating to the cloud. They're using Cove Data Protection as a accidental migration. They fail over from on-premise into the Azure cloud or into a Hyper-V or a VMware environment, and they just kind of stay there. Virtualized workloads are great, cloud workloads are great, and sometimes there's no reason to fail back. A lot of those respondents were coming back and saying that, when I say it was greater than 51% were saying that they're going to be fully storing their backups in the cloud, within the next 3 to 5 years. I kind of argue on that one a little bit. I guess maybe if they're using multiple vendors and things like that, but if they're a Cove backup and recovery partner today, regardless of where they're backing it up, it's all being stored in the cloud since we are cloud first. Do you see it as an opportunity for us though, to try to capture more backup and recovery as they're moving to a pure cloud environment?
Yeah, first there's the data source, right? So that's the part we just talked about. Then there's the backup service itself. So Cove runs in the cloud, right? So that's already inherent benefit. If you think about it, we're protecting cloud workloads. They are SaaS workloads, generally speaking, or IT as a service. So why would I mean, why on earth would data protection be different, right? So we're just similar in nature and with all the benefits that go along with it. And then, of course, there's a conversation about the target. Where do the backups go? And so we, of course, have our data stored in our data centers, right? So it gives you a little bit of protection. What if Microsoft or your tenant is down? Well, we still have sort of the data tucked away in another data center. So it's not all eggs in one basket. But I do foresee an opportunity sort of going forward to kind of consider if you're going to bring your customer, you're bringing your own cloud, how do we support you that you can just natively write to that, right? That's typically a requirement we see higher up market, but as we progress, we should look at that as well. So essentially build an S3 connector, and then we could point the backups at the cloud that you already have or bring along, right?
I'm thinking that's going to reduce the attack surface too, right? It's going to make the backups more secure. It takes the IT professional or the MSP, the end customer, out of the loop there. There's no servers to patch, no hardware to do firmware updates on, things like that.
Without a doubt. I mean, nothing is foolproof, right? But the fact that our data protection or backup infrastructure is not on the same network as the data it's trying to protect, the fact that the copies are in our cloud just inherently reduces the attack vector. It doesn't make it zero, but it certainly means that you can spend a lot less time hardening. I mean, I've seen hardening guides in the hundreds of pages for on-premise solutions. And if that's the work you want to do, great, more power to you. But I'd rather see our customers focus on, okay, let's make sure all the checks are, checked off, if you will, but then make an investment. How do I stand up that breach prevention offering and, invest in other technologies like AI, right? Versus doing infrastructure management, right? So typically when they get out of that, they get more time on their hands to automate, to learn about these emerging technologies, and then actually pass that on to their customers and also run a more profitable business.
You touched on AI there. So yeah, if we're going to double down, we're going to invest in AI. Some people think of AI as this magical thing that we can invest in, and AI powered backup and recovery. Is that a myth? Is that something that you would trust? I think of it like AI backup is kind of like AI banking. Do you want AI writing the check for you when the bill comes in, or do you want to be able to touch that? Where are we going with AI?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And this was also, I think, the verbiage used in the Canalys report. But I think in spirit, what it's meant to say, it's AI is a tool, always, right? It's just a tool to do a job. And whether you have autonomous actions or it just helps you drive a human action with more efficiency, that's kind of like a case-by-case situation. So, for example, we talked about breach prevention. AI makes a ton of sense. They have all these signals coming in. You need that AI layer so that the humans that then look at the remaining sort of corner cases, if you want to look at it that way, they can be more focused on some of the stuff that really would represent a risk, right? So it's a huge time saving or a way to offload because the way these signals are coming in at that speed is crazy. In Cove, it's a little bit different, or for backup, I would say. There's no AI-powered backup. That's a bit of a buzzword, but we can use AI for the simplification of a lot of things and to, of course, make the backup and the recovery more reliable. That's how I look at it. So in our case, what we implemented with the recovery testing and standby image, we had some failure rate, right, that was greater than 10%. Meaning when you do a recovery test or a recovery test as part of the standby image, 10% of the time, there would be a false positive or false negative. Either is bad, right? So you don't really have that confidence that 10% of the time you get it right. So what we did is we just had this mini module. We deployed it at the agent. It's super small. And we trained it, right? Because we have all these statistics. We've done all these recovery testing. We know what's wrong or which was a false positive, false negative. So long story short, after we trained the model and deployed it, our accuracy went up to 99%. So what's nice about that, it just means your confidence will go up and your efficiency will get better because you have to spend less time troubleshooting. That's a good example.
Yeah, tech efficiency definitely a big thing there. If I know I'm at a 99% success rate on my screenshots, I can just go to the ones that report as a failure, do those tests, do that investigation, and not have to touch everything to say, well, is it a false positive or false negative? I know you're working on some things like cyber recovery and breach detection and honeypots and things like that. Is that a 2025 deliverable, 2026 deliverable? When are we going to see those kind of things coming out?
Well, it is spanned, right? It's always a multi-quarter, multi-year journey because the hackers never stop. We got to up our game, right? And that actually also has a tie-in with AI, right? So there's probably like 3 attack vectors that you want to worry about. And when I look at some of the backup vendors in the market, they're very heavy on the anomaly detection at the data, right? So, and they go to a point where they basically would say, well, we can find malware in the backups. I'm like, well, don't you have an MDR tool to do that? I mean, that just doesn't even make sense, right? So I think there's a little bit of architecture, but we do want to find when data is corrupt, right? So if from one observation to another, data gets corrupted somehow, it would be good to know because it allows you to more quickly point to a good copy versus a corrupted copy, right? So it's all about shortening that recovery time. There, we can use AI, right, for pattern recognition. And that is certainly something we've already done a POC on, a hackathon, with success, but we have to now find a way to implement it in product. But the thing is, that's just one attack vector. That requires I get some kind of credentials, and then I use AI-assisted ransomware or something like that to corrupt the data, and that's maybe how I would orchestrate my attack. But nobody talks about, well, if I have those credentials, what if I just destroy your configuration? I shorten your retention. I just delete a backup. So that's something that's actually this year. We're going to come out with that in Q3. We call that critical config changes. And that's super nice, right? So because oftentimes I don't even know that something like that happened or something like that a backup was deleted. I could take action. I didn't know about it. I didn't get an alert or an event. And now what do I do, right? So that's definitely something that we're going to pursue this year, Q3. And then there's another layer that I would describe as a brute force attack, right? So a lot of times, we have all these bells and whistles, anomaly detection at the data level, but what if they just wipe away the VM or the file system? In other words, they go lower in the stack and they just wipe away the whole thing. So for us, that would kind of imply that you would have some way to find your way into our cloud native backup infrastructure, wipe away some containers if you want to look at it, file systems, and we will introduce anomaly detection as a service for that also, free of charge. So we monitor it, and we have these little honeypots that imitate these fake cabinets. And so when the bad actor tries to take some action that's unusual outside of the pattern of the backup, we immediately flag it. So isn't that great? You don't even have to worry about it. There's no excessive monitoring. We do it. We'll let you know, and we'll do restoration from fortified copies as an example to remediate the problem.
Yeah, it's just a great evolution of the immutability features we've introduced, and you're right. If we don't continue to evolve those, then the bad actors are going to get ahead of us, right?
Right.
I think the other 500-pound gorilla in the room is probably hosted recovery or a SaaS-based recovery, DRAS, disaster recovery as a service. I know we're actively working toward that. It's probably not a short-term deliverable, but it's something that's come up in almost all of these discussions. Partners want to see it and spin it up in an enable hosted data center. How's the progress coming on that?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is like Google, like these are projects that are bigger, but they're in progress, right? So we've listened and we're working on it, and the team is amazing, right? So that's the good news. The driver there is, of course, very simple. I mean, I don't want to bring my own infrastructure. Maybe I don't have the skills, or I want to focus on something else. I'm willing to pay a premium for enable, essentially, to bring that DR infrastructure and so forth. So the progress is going great. We looked at some hyperscaler cloud options as the DR target that we would own. We would bring our enable tenant, right? But that proved to be really economically not great. So we're going to just use our own data center because we already have it. And we're going to go down that route, and it's going to help us also be more competitive. And that includes, when I say us, it means our community of MSPs as well, right? As you remember, we did this nice sort of innovation in Q1 where we reduced the cost of Azure, right? So that just makes it easier for us collectively to offer this with some pricing flexibility while still making margins. But yeah, it's in development, and if there's anybody interested in joining the preview whenever that's available, I'd say let's do it.
I'm sure we can throw some links into the video recording of this and get it out to the product managers so they can start to do some preliminary customer previews. I'm I'm involved in a session here probably within the next hour, hour and a half after we finish this up, with one of your product managers. Actually, we're going to go in and we're going to talk about the billing APIs. You alluded to that a little bit. The things that I thought were really sexy there. Not only is it just a billing API, but we've also got that integration with two of our sponsors here at Empower, one being Roost, one being Halo PSA. And so we've taken not just that API, but we've integrated it with their particular application so that we can, take actions, trigger alerts, pull billing usage, drop it into multiple different PSA tools. Would definitely encourage the attendees or the watchers here and the attendees to schedule some time with your product managers, get into those engineering previews. We do monthly product releases, so you'll see that coming into a Cove dashboard in the near future.
Yeah. That's a really cool one because it actually makes the ecoverse real, doesn't it? I mean, that's like a real use case. Everybody's struggling. So I just mentioned that example of backup fails or Stefan deletes a backup, right? So that could be also consumed in a PSA like Halo. That would be a ticketing use case, right? Don't just send an email, but just push it or pull it into the Halo PSA through a webhook, right? So that would be a straightforward integration that we're working on. But of course, the billing use case is really cool because it's such a pain point, right? We talked about in the beginning, executive summary reports, but we don't want to have our technicians spend like days and days just invoicing, right? If we can take that off their plate. Maybe we would say it's not the sexiest AI whiz-bang feature, but it's sure sexy to me because, this is the way we can invest more in automation and do some other stuff, right?
Yeah, something I was told years ago, MSPs measure profitability in the number of clicks.
Yeah.
If it's 24 clicks to offboard a user, to generate a report, to send out an email and communication on these things, then time is money, clicks are money. So anything we can do to increase that efficiency is going to go a long way to keeping Cove in place and ultimately securing everything they have.
Exactly.
Stefan, thank you so much. I think we got to get to our next event, go make some partners really happy. But I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks, man.